Welcome to Start Lines and Swag Bags. The airing of this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and is not intended to replace advice from professional medical or training staff. Thank you for listening and your support of the Flying Pig Project.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Start Lines and Swag Bags. We're going to try something new tonight. No matter what happens with the introduction, I am going to keep going. Does not matter. I have my maybe she's born with it, maybe it's ADHD mug in my hand with my coffee. And we're just going to go. Because here's the thing. This is before an episode, but I did something different. Instead of doing a big introduction on the episode, I cut that out so that I could have a little more time to do a quick intro into the episode. So we're focusing on defining runner. You know, what does a runner mean to you? What does a runner mean to me? And just for funsies, I started looking at the definition. Oops, that was a bad thing there. I started looking at the definitions of runner, run, and all those things. And here's the thing. You know, how do we define a runner? A runner apparently is someone who does the act of a run. Okay. But what's a run? Now, here's the fun part. A run could be someone going outside and jogging down the block. You could want to run an errand. Now, if you're going to go run an errand, are you doing the errand or are you actually strapping on the Nikes and going down the block? I'm running late. Now, I don't have anything for that one. For those of you who remember pantyhose, you could have a run in your pantyhose. How does that have anything to do with running? And my personal favorite, how many out there have ever had the runs? Now, you know, good old potty humor. But that's all I'm saying. I mean, we're trying to define a word that in itself can be used as a noun, as a verb. I think I actually have, an adjective. The eggs are runny. What does that mean? So, you know, how do you define a word that already has so many definitions? Well, you don't. You create your own definition. So I have my own definition of what a run is. Somebody else may have a different definition of what a run is. And that plays directly into how we view ourselves as runners. For this week's episode, I reached out very last minute to two very good friends of mine, Marie and Ryan, who I know solely because of the Swifters. And I am a better person for having known them. And they did not disappoint. This episode, we go deep. We really do talk about things that people don't necessarily want to talk about themselves. And both Ryan and Marie are 100% transparent, 100% vulnerable, because they, as I believe, you can't keep these things locked inside of you. And you need to surround yourself with people that you can share those things with. Because if you can't share the mental part of it, I think that's problematic. For me, it is. You know, you see a runner and they're on a crutch or they have a brace, and we're all really quick to run up there and be like, "Oh my gosh, what happened? What's going on with you?" But you know, a lot of us self-esteem issues. How we view ourselves interferes with our ability to perform at our maximum. But you don't see that because it's in here, it's in the brain. So find people like Ryan, like Marie, who you can talk to about that. So not only does it help normalize it for yourself, but it helps normalize it for other people. Because at the end of the day, if I don't accomplish anything else with this podcast. That's what I want to do. That being said, I really hope you enjoy this episode. Thank you, as always, for supporting the Flying Pig Project. Embrace the crazy to unlock a world of possibilities. And Marty, I did it in one take. All right, so please join me in welcoming Ryan and Marie to Start Lines and Swag Bags. Thank you so much for literally last minute hopping on.
Glad to be here.
First, before anything happens, please introduce yourselves. You may share anything and everything you'd like.
Everything, huh?
Yeah.
That is pretty wide open. I guess since this is mostly running. Ryan Hieronymus. I don't know how long I've been running. A long time. I ran track in high school. 5Ks for a long time. Slowly got into distance stuff. Did a 1,000-day streak. During the pandemic, ran lots of pretend ultras and marathons.
They count. They were real.
Virtual, right? Everything was virtual. Yeah, I mean that's just the kind of high level overview, and then I handed the torch off to Marie to be the runner in the family these days.
I am Marie. I also ran track in high school, but that was more to have a reason to not go home as soon as the school day was done. So I would say I was not really what I would consider for myself, a serious runner until probably within the last year. I mean, I've done my share of 5Ks. And I did my first long race was a half marathon when I was living in Florida. And that was, that was probably 15 years ago. Didn't really train for it. It was more, I told somebody I might do it and they kind of laughed at me like, really? And I was like, well, yes, really. I think the longest training run I did for it was an 8-mile run. And then I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. It wasn't pretty, but I did it.
There you go.
And then I didn't run for years. And then Ryan was the runner in our house for
when we met,
years.
Though, right? Because you said, I'd run this half marathon and like all those mud runs and stuff. Because we were living in Florida when we met, mud runs and this and that. So I had a group of friends from work who would do a bunch of stuff like that. So I looped Marie into that and drug her out in the mud and made her run around.
Well, because he was super fit. And I was like, yeah, I'm a runner. Yeah, I'm a runner. Yeah.
So hold on. I have a couple takeaways. First of all, if you're not watching, you didn't see Marie kind of air quote Ryan on the runner. You did. You air. Oh, there come the balloons. Sorry. you air quoted that. I also have to say that I'm also the personality that if someone says, if I say I'm going to run a half marathon, you're going to run a half marathon? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I've grown out of that. Thankfully, I've grown out.
Really?
No, can't convince you. Poke you a little bit.
There, some recent episodes, some people have actually gotten me to think that I may start running again. And I have publicly admitted to telling Sabrina that next to marathon, you can throw maybe. Now, let's not get carried away. All right, but Marie, hold on. There's more to your story.
There is. Where did I end up? Yes. So
you wanted to be fit like Ryan.
Ryan. I was like, yeah, I can be a runner. I'm a runner. Yes. I'll run with you. Then, when Ryan went through his, what I like to call, his streak. His streak, when he did his running streak. I really wasn't running at that time. And this was 2020, 2021, 2019, 2022.
Yeah.
I really wasn't doing much at that time. I think I might have done a few 5Ks through that stretch.
It's like we went to Starved Rock. We ran the trails together and little runs together when we could.
I was not consistently training for anything.
I would agree because I know when I first met you, which of course we'll also touch on, Ryan was I don't know what point in the streak, but you were still in your streak, and Marie, you did not run, and you had blue hair.
That sounds about right. Yes.
All the pandemic colors.
Yes. So Ryan ran to get through COVID, and I messed around with my hair to get through COVID. So
I welcome both coping mechanisms
Yeah.
equally, as you know, because I've now settled on nothing but maybe I'll actually. Ryan has also sported blue.
Well, because she had the hair dye, and so yeah, when I
mhm.
did the Earth Day 50K and the Chicago Marathon, I had some colorful beard going on. It's
Earth
fun.
Day is the picture I'm thinking of with the kids running next to you
Uh,
and your face full of
best,
blue.
the best
Yeah,
picture
that's one of my
ever.
favorite image memory.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
I know, and now it's an ad. Now, when that race comes up, your picture comes up. All right, but interestingly enough, then back to when I did meet you. Now, I'm going to let everybody out there know that. Well, let's see. Should I share? Now, first, you tell me how you know me, and then I'm going to share what I think of you.
Oh my goodness. Okay, we're getting real
Yeah.
up in here. Okay.
Well, I
Um,
forget when, but I mean, it was early
Pretty
in the Swifter
early.
days, right? Might not have been the first or second, but like you were there in the first, yeah, a couple weeks, right? Third week, yeah.
Yeah.
So I knew it was early on, and you were there, right?
You brought energy with you. You brought
Yeah,
like just positive energy that just kind of lifted up the vibe in the space, and it was delightful.
yeah, fun energy, and
I
yeah,
was
and just
like, who
like
is
easy
this?
to
I
talk
like
to, and
her.
yeah,
Wow. So but I'm going to tell you what I think of you. And I know the way I phrase that's kind of funny. Well, but here's the thing. So, when I talk about Skokie and the Swifters and all that, to me, that's like going home. I mean, just going home in so many different ways. But you too are the people that when I walk through the door, you haven't seen me in a year. It doesn't, God, well, the Swifters have been around that long. I can say that. Because I think the last time I was there, it was months since I had seen you guys, but it's big hugs. It's hello, how are you? Let's sit down, let's talk. I look at your kids, they're growing up before my eyes, or I run into Marie at, the United Club, and it's, oh, hello, how are you? Because, you're just so warm and so genuine, and you're part of why I love coming out there. And Ryan, don't you still hold a special place on the Swifters?
I mean,
On the board.
I'm part of the board.
Yeah.
You are part of the board.
I
What
am.
is your position?
I don't know. I mainly take care of Strava. Obviously we take turns hosting events and that kind of stuff. I also do a lot of crafting, I guess, right? Like so the plaques and those kind of things. So I, bought myself a little wood or laser the
Engraver.
engraver. Thank you. Yeah, and like to play in the garage. So I'm always like, oh, I can make that. Yeah, I'll make that for you. So yeah, the plaques for Swifter of the Year, Swiftiest Swifter, and little things like that. That's fun to do. And then, right when you kind of brought the idea of the Strava challenges, right? So we kind of continued to do that. It's kind of tapered off some. The excitement wasn't sustained, and did my best to try to keep it going. But it's always fun to do those segment challenges and have little raffles and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So yeah.
Yeah, you definitely were a great partner when I brought the Strava Mafia to Skokie. And you make an excellent point. It kind of petered out here as well. I know that he did start it during COVID as like a way to
Yeah.
connect people without people having to be with each other. And it did kind of dwindle down at the end, which is I think why he ultimately walked away from it. Um, but yeah, that was some good times though. But and then the creepy carousel. Oh my gosh, the pirate ship, the Halloween
The
Mhm.
thing,
elephant.
the elephant, and I don't know which one it was. I want to say it was more on the other side of McCormick. Maybe that was the pirate ship. Then all of a sudden one day the sidewalk was gone.
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you was that the pirate ship?
Well, it depends on what part you're running there, but yeah,
It
there's
was one
also, I mean, mean like the sidewalk on the actual street? Because I mean, there's parts of that over by the elephant too, where like there's sidewalk and then there's no sidewalk, and it's just weird streets. But
I remember when you ultimately shortened the segment a little bit because they started doing construction, and if you went like full guns a blazing,
that might have been the pirate ship, yeah. Because I think otherwise you ended up on Main Street, and it's like, okay, well that's not, yeah. So I mean, there was lessons learned there too, because initially, like, well, you want to make it long enough that it's interesting and fun, right? But then you also want to not make it so direct that you can just do a straight loop over and over. But yeah, I mean,
People find a way to do that no matter what.
Oh yeah, crafting a segment is an art form, I guess.
I think my best memory of that is hands down going to be the day that I met the boat owners and they let me put the sign in the yard. They were an interesting couple.
Yeah. They ran a rum business or something, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
they did.
Yeah, the ship is no longer there though. It's sad.
So it's gone?
Yep, it's gone. I'm assuming they moved maybe, or I don't know if somebody complained about it and they took it down. But it was, I mean, so I've also, as a random aside, I've also run all the streets in Skokie. When I was running, there was some other city strides, I think. And so again, when you run that much and, work wasn't really as worky during COVID, and I was trying to find ways to entertain myself. So I ran all the city streets in Skokie, and again, lots of interesting sculptures and random things you see when you really check out the city you live in, right? Artwork and weird sculptures and just, weird houses and other things.
So we're there's several different questions I have. Okay. I'm going to start with Marie for a second. So I ran into you recently at a race. Now, I knew you guys were going to be there, but you didn't know I was going to be there because I didn't go on the little sign up thing. But I think that we actually found each other pretty early on. Why were you there so early?
That was thanks to our Swifter friend, Max. We carpooled. There were 4 of us that were there. This was for the F3. Was it the F3? It was the F3. January half marathon? Was it a half marathon? Yes. Did I do a half marathon? I did. I don't remember.
Because you said, I'm going to run a half marathon every month this year. How's that going?
Well, I did January. I did February. TBD. Anyway,
you did because you PR'd it.
I did by seconds, by mere seconds.
See, now this is what we have to work on. If I say you PR'd it, your only comment is, yeah, I did.
I did.
Yes, I did.
I don't need to know if it wasn't by like 0.1 milliseconds.
PR is a PR.
I did.
PR is a PR. Yeah. All right. And I supplied something to you and Rebecca that I just happened to be carrying with me. Do you remember what that was?
Sheer joy. And a bagel.
Yeah, I that's right. You did compliment me on my sheer joy that day. I'm not sure I was very happy in that moment anyway. But yes, I happen to be carrying a bag of bagels.
Yes.
Little mini bagels. Mm-hmm. I don't know. First of all, for the record, I don't even know why I was carrying that bag of bagels because I did the 5K. And I'm not dissing people who do the 5K. But you don't need a bag of bagels to do the 5K.
Why not?
The whole bag was gone. But yes, I had emergency bagels. And I said to you and Rebecca that I hoped to get you guys back on the show at some point because I wanted to talk about a topic that is circulating on the pod very often. And I think it's a very important one. And it's how we see ourselves. And I talked about seeing yourself as a runner. Now, everybody, Marie admitted to me before we started recording that she doesn't necessarily remember what she said, but I remember what she said. You said you still feel like a poser.
Yep. That checks out. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Before you explain that, I want everybody to know what's the longest distance you've now done as a runner?
A marathon.
A marathon. a marathon.
And only posers run marathons.
Right. So, my marathon running dear friend, please know that you are in no way, shape, or form alone in thinking that you're not a runner, because that theme is so consistent with everybody from run walkers to what we're now calling regular runners, and even people who can do 6 and 7 minute paces sometimes. They don't feel like a runner this day. But why do you feel that way?
Because I know a lot of people that I consider to be runners, and I'm not at their level.
Okay, so that's a very valid answer. And I'm going to tell you that I'm going to listen to you, and I'm going to tell you that right now I don't feel like a runner either. And that's because I haven't actually like run anything in more than in close to a year. But you see other people.
Mhm.
First of all, let's acknowledge it doesn't matter what they're doing that defines you as a runner. Right? Okay.
Sure.
But what are they doing that you feel they have runner status and you don't have runner status?
Yeah, fancier shoes.
No, that's not it at all. That's a good question.
So I'm gonna hold on. You aren't this. Here's the thing. This is a thinking thing. If you don't have to answer these questions, because these are questions that that are just coming up, and if I can just get people thinking about it, I'm good with that. Because to myself, I think, why don't I think of myself as a runner? Because here's the thing, people, I don't know where I saw this, but it was like they were a former athlete. That was the word. It was former athlete. Okay, when do you stop being the athlete? Why are you a former athlete? I think he was talking about like pro football players or team sports or whatever. But like, if you're not playing, let's say baseball, you're a former baseball player. Okay, you're not currently playing on a baseball team. Is that what makes you a former baseball player? But why aren't you still a baseball player? Because you're not on a team?
I mean, some of it's just semantics, right? But I mean, it's always easy, I think, to pick something to measure yourself against, right? Whether it is your younger self, whether it is a friend, whether it is a professional athlete, whether it is, some media BS about what it takes to be an athlete or a runner or something. It's easy to look at those things and then cast aspersions upon yourself to say that I'm not that. I don't fit that either, body type or speed or whatever. I mean, I think, well, now more so than ever, because I am an active for health reasons and other things. Now is probably the first time that I've really not felt like a runner, right? Like I think I was happy that I kind of stayed away from comparison is the thief of joy kind of thing. And I didn't, because I'm like, I'm not as fast as them, and that's fine. I am out here running, but I mean, I always ran, and most of the time it was just for my own mental health. I mean, even if I was smoking or doing other dumb things in my life, running was always something that would help clear my mind, and it was always therapy to me. So running most of the time has never been about accomplishments. It's been about just being out there. So, but like I say, now that comparison against myself, the person who did the 1,000 days, the person who did all these other things, because I'm not running, now is the time that I'm like, well, I'm not a runner.
I'm with you. That's where I am. You and I are on the same page with that, because post foot break, and then just other things in life, things happen.
Yep.
The other thing that's been said a lot is, as we know, restarting is so much harder than starting. I'm waiting for the restart, but no, I don't consider myself a runner right now. But Marie,
Yes.
It's back to you.
Yeah. It's not. So my statement in saying that I don't feel like a runner. I'm a runner. I run a few times a week. usually. But I still have this feeling of being an imposter. There is a part of me that is running just because I want to feel like a part of the running community because they are some of the coolest people I know. And I don't want to have FOMO. So am I a runner, or am I just
You are a runner.
trying to like include myself in this community because I think they're really cool? And am I don't know.
You run,
Well,
you have running goals. I mean,
we are really cool.
it's easy. It's easy to not feel like this.
We are really cool. And here's the interesting thing about that. Obviously, or when I say obviously, I always mean about myself, because I'm not how I feel about myself and how everybody else feels about themselves. We all have different experiences. We're looking through things through different lenses, all of these factors. It boils down to how we look at ourselves. I don't think I'm a runner because I don't look like somebody else. I don't run as many times as they do. I don't run as fast as they do. I don't have the same dedication they do.
I'm not as consistent as I think a runner should be.
But you're out there doing it.
Sometimes.
But you're doing it.
I'm siding with Ryan and everything he says, and I'm feeling like Marie.
Oh, I get it. Like I say, it's easy to tell other people that yes, you are more than you see for yourself sometimes, right? Because it's our own self-doubt, our own issues, right, that keep us from letting ourselves acknowledge our own worth.
Because my standards are different. Obviously, my standards are different than what I would judge anybody else on.
Well, of course. Absolutely. But at the same time, I'm going to flip it. And sometimes I look at some people I know who are, 6 days a week, very routine oriented in their training, which is exactly no, no. Which for them is what they need and what they do. It's not the right way to do it. It's not the wrong way to do it. It's the right way for them. But I look at them and go, why do you do that? And what drives you to do that? Because I don't have that drive. And that's okay. And that's supposed to be okay.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there's all sorts of things in your life that happen that get you out of those routines, right? Because when it was every day, there was no question. I was going to go run, right? But then something happens, and then it does become a question. So then you're trying to schedule yourself. You're doing those other things. Yeah. So I took a long break when we had kids because it wasn't a priority, and it was hard to do when we had kids. So yeah. So there's so many more reasons beyond just being injured that people can fall out of running.
And let's just say that's okay. Yep. Because you don't have to answer to anybody but yourself.
I'm a tough critic, though.
Okay. Ryan, I have a question.
Okay. I hope they have an answer.
Berlin.
It's a city in Germany.
Yes, it is. Aren't you registered for that?
I am registered currently for the Berlin Marathon. I had gotten hopeful about it. Like I say, I had blood clots now 2 years ago. So that was my first kind of break from not running as much. And then there was a whole mind reset about what running was to me, or what my goals, what my expectations were coming back from that. Really just being able to run was the first thing, right? So, and I started slowly back, but I always still felt tired, or I couldn't get past 3 miles for the longest time. And so up and down. I finally started, I think it was Marie, started running a little bit more. Like we ran together on vacation last summer in Michigan, and like slowly, okay, 5 mile. And then I finally got to the point where I think I ran 8 or 10. I'm like, oh, like, okay, like I'm quote unquote back, right? Like I am to the point where I feel like, yes, I could do something, right? And I hadn't signed up for a race. And so I was like, you know what? Screw it. Let's sign up for Berlin. It's probably not going to happen, but it was a carrot for myself, right? It was something to keep me motivated, because you need that race sometimes. because if you're not, then it's easy to be like, oh, I'm not training for anything, so I don't need to go out today. So yes, I signed up, and lo and behold, it got accepted. And then, of course, something else happens. So now I've been dealing with this whole sciatica thing, and um, yeah, so I'm hopefully going to get that sorted out. I've been very cautious about the approach just because I'm getting old and things don't, heal like they used to. And um, so, yes, I would love to go and run Berlin. I mean, there's a lot of personal meaning to running in Berlin as well. So we lost my stepfather. He's the man who raised me, and his parents were from Germany. My parents were always going to go back like a part of their second honeymoon. It didn't happen. He passed away with Alzheimer's. Um,
So we're going to take
so we're taking
my
the whole
mom-in-law.
family,
Yeah.
right? Because mom never got to go back with him. So it was a little bit of a nod to him. And then just taking the kids too to, go see the world. So I'm hopeful that it happens. So I'm waiting on some health clearance things. Started back walking. We'll see about running and some other things, but yeah, I'm getting old and I'm, trying to take better care of myself. But I mean, it feels weird, right? Going from like, oh, the guy who runs every day for almost 3 years to then like struggling to run. So being able to feel like I could do Berlin was, I mean, that alone was a huge, just like uplift for my spirits. Like, hey, yeah, I'm a runner again.
We got the air quotes again.
No,
Because first of all, when is Berlin? Remind me.
on my birthday, September 21st. So that was the other kind of like
Sign.
Yeah.
But here's the interesting thing. In listening to your explanation, I'm reminded of a couple things. I'm reminded why I love to do these more unstructured formats because, on any given time, if I'd go out to Skokie, we don't have time to like sit and talk like this. I'm bringing a lot of people onto the show and I'm learning and I think becoming better friends with people as we learn about each other in this way. And as I'm listening to Ryan, all I keep wondering in that whole time was, what is his definition of a runner? Because he started saying, I'm doing things like a runner does. Or, what is your definition of a runner? For you.
Somebody who runs. It's as simple as that. And again, I mean, you can say that, right? But then there are certain days when, again, you question yourself or you compare yourself and other things. But because I've had this conversation with multiple people, I mean, and just on a large scale as well, right? I've seen the question, right? If you run, you're a runner, right? No matter the self-doubt, no matter the other stuff, if you run, you're a runner, right? Or even run, walk, that kind of stuff. So it's moving your body. And again, to me though, moving my body is part of like a release, part of mental aspect as well. Even though you're physical, it's about that release, about letting your mind just kind of go when you're running. And I miss those long runs that are mentally healing, right? Because you get in the zone and you just kind of let everything else melt away and you enjoy the run. I mean, fast, slow, whatever. I mean, crappy weather, but you've completed this thing, whether it's 5 miles, 10 miles, whatever, and you've gone from point A to point B or point A and back to point A, but maybe you have accomplished something in your mind, and you're moving your body, which obviously we all need to do. So, a very random long.
That's okay.
Running.
Maybe I'll cut it. Maybe I won't.
Yeah.
You won't remember. Just kidding. But see, what I like here is when we're talking about, how do you define running? Because I'm going to flip it a little bit. Like I have a friend who is a very consistent runner, has been for many, 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 many years. And when several years ago, I was trying to improve my running. And I was getting a little better. And I was part of a run walk program. And I was all freaked out because that week, I think we had jumped to like a 10-1. So a 10-minute run, 1-minute walk. And I said to him, hey, I'm really freaking out about tonight's workout. He's like, why? I'm like, well, because it's a 10-minute run, 1 minute walk. And he looked at me deadpan in the face. He's like, well, why would you stop to walk? Why don't you just keep going? Because in his mind, a definition of runner for him was someone who was consistent at like a 6:30 to 7:30 pace, consistently between like 38 and 45 miles a week. So for him, my definition of a runner didn't work because we all have our different definitions.
Right. I think it was my friend Nile who at one point he said, "Stop asking runners what their pace is. Ask them why they run." Right? Because that's what's important.
Well, that's exactly right. And you do a half marathon, you do a marathon, you do any race. I go to work the next day. I did a 5K. Everybody's like, "You did? Wow, I could never do that." They don't care that I did it in 52 minutes because I just kind of strolled along. They don't care. The only person that cares is you. That's going back to Marie. I PR'd. Okay. And but only by no. I think there was
that's the addictive, challenging part, right? Like once you get into something, you want to get better for yourself. Yeah. Right. And so, it's only, and right. That's why we sell ourselves short then, because, I only ran 5 miles today, or I only PR'd by a couple seconds, but you're out there and you're moving. So that's what's important.
The words that every runner needs to eliminate are only and but. I ran 5 miles, but I had to walk. I PR'd, but only by a few seconds. I don't know if you've ever heard of an Olympic runner, Alexi Pappas.
Who I don't know the story.
Yeah. I love her in every way. And she was on the Rich Roll podcast, which I also love. And she was talking about how she views runs or she had a coach that told her, you need to look at your runs in terms of thirds. A third of your runs are going to be amazing, PRs, fantastic. A third of them are going to be okay. But that means a third of them are going to suck. And the ones that suck aren't just training runs. It could be a race day run. It could be any run. But every single run is not going to be a PR. Every single run you're not going to improve on, especially when you're in training and maybe you're focusing on like a recovery run where you have to run 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes slower. Being able to accomplish that is a victory in itself, even though the pace isn't going to reflect that.
Yep, agreed. So sometimes just getting out the door, right, is the battle, right? I mean, that's the win right there, right? Because once you get out and get moving,
it's getting out the door or it's plugging in the treadmill. Because I know.
Although there are days, there are days because weather will absolutely be a consideration when I'm like, am I going to run today? Well, and the further it gets into the day, the less and less likely it is that I'm going to get out for that run. But man, I don't think I've run on a treadmill in like 10 years, but
wow,
some days where I just if there was a day I was going to run on a treadmill, I'm not going to, but if there was a time where I might.
Yeah, during the streak, if we had a treadmill, there might have been some days I ran on a treadmill, but I hate treadmills. I would rather go outside and freeze and have a frozen beard face and numb fingers and all that kind of stuff. I mean, obviously, if you dress appropriately, most of the time you can overcome the weather, right? I mean, but if you're most of the time, right? If you're out there for an 18-mile training run or something and it's just dead cold, it's going to suck. But you learn from that. You learn better layering. You do what you can to figure it out. But I would much rather be cold than on a treadmill.
Well, I can only 1,000% agree with you. Some of the best runs I've ever had have been with 10 layers of clothing. It is freezing. You're 3 minutes slower, but some guy who's, snow blowing his driveway is like, "You're a badass." And I'm like, "You bet I am."
Right.
I mean, that's absolutely.
I
Um,
love that. Yeah, random people like yelling for you, right? I mean, yeah, all sorts of random runs where people have been like, "Yeah, you go get it,"
Or
whatever.
they say, "You're crazy."
Yeah, or the bum I woke up on my run. Anyway, he was yelling at us because we were being too loud at like 6 in the morning. So
Seriously?
yeah, I think it was it was the first virtual marathon. I was supposed to have done the Illinois marathon right that April May of when everything got shut down, 2020,
Oh,
and because I was going to do a spring marathon before I did the Chicago marathon that same year. Um, and so my friend and I did a virtual one, right? So we were in Rogers Park at the time. We ran like down to Wrigley and back, and then up to Baha'i and back, and then some loops. And so as we were going through, um, uh, why did I just forget the name of the neighborhood? Anyway, we were running south, and it was early-ish, right? And we're chatting. I mean, normal talking volume. Obviously, you're running, so maybe you're like a little bit. But he's like, "Be quiet out there! I'm trying to sleep." I'm like, all right, sorry, dude. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, generally the strangers are yelling nice things, like yeah, go. But sometimes you're too loud for somebody who's trying to sleep.
all right. So, Miss, I don't look like a runner. What's your next race?
The next race is going to be the Shamrock 8K in 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks
Something like that.
later this month.
24th.
Yeah. I do not have a half marathon for March. So
Gotta get on that.
I was told maybe only having a month in between half marathons might not be the best training plan for my body. So
Well, so two things. I will be at the water station at Shamrock.
wonderful.
I am one of the two safety coordinators at the hydration station, so I
Okay.
will be looking for all things yellow
Sweet.
because both my teams wear
Paint the
yellow.
town yellow, right?
Yeah.
And the second thing is actually March is not a big month for half marathons around here.
Yeah.
It's the kickoff with March Madness in Cary next weekend on the Cary circuit. And I actually don't know of any other. This is when I turn on what's called the race Rolodex, which is my brain. And I can't think of another half in March around here. We really start up again in April. All right, so you have an 8K. Have you done the shuffle?
I have not.
Oh.
It usually, I feel like it always falls during
Spring
the
break.
kids' spring break. So
Yeah.
we're either not sure if we're going to be around, or I just don't want to commit to it, or there's something else going on with the family. So
So I'm going to warn you right now. Well, I'm going to tell you if it's your first 8K, you automatically have a PR. So great job.
yeah, thanks.
I will also tell you
But
that. For a second there, I was like, but what? And then I'm like, oh, yeah, I see it now.
Call back.
I will also tell you that you are going to start the race and you're going to go under Laura Wacker. And back to Ryan.
This isn't going to work.
Don't wake the bums. And your watch is not going to work. So when you emerge and you start running on the streets, you're going to look at your watch and it's not going to be right. And you are not going to worry about it because it's your first 8K.
Okay.
So it's an automatic PR.
Okay.
And if I
find people too, it's hard to navigate.
Oh, it's between the potholes and the one time I did it I think 2 years ago. I wasn't doing it for time because I'm not going to win. I did it because I don't actually go into the city that much, even though I used to work down there. And I kind of just liked slowing down and looking at all the buildings and seeing where I used to go for lunch or, what went in here or what went in there. And not to mention the fact you're going to lose, a good 15 to 20 seconds because if I find you when you're running, you're going to have to stop.
Okay.
And we're going to have to hug. What's after Shamrock?
After Shamrock is going to be, I think the next thing after that is going to be the Chicago half in June. There might be some, is there anything in April? No, I don't think there is. I think it's going to be the Chicago half in June.
Which one is that? Is that the
Bank of America 13.1?
So that's where, because you want to do get the whole race series.
I
Right?
wanted to do the
Oh,
series
Yeah.
this year, but I did not.
Didn't get into
Well,
Chicago.
I said I would never do another marathon again. I said one was enough. However, but I also really want that. I want the bonus medal, but I did not make it into the Chicago Marathon.
Yeah.
she could do another marathon.
She should do an ultra.
Eh.
Yeah, you know what? So for many, many reasons, I don't disagree. Whereas I never did an ultra, I prefer trail over road every day and any day.
Yep.
And that's even saying I on one race I caught a tree root and I went down bad. I would still do it trail in a second. Heartbeat.
Again, it's just a whole different thing. I mean, Chicago Marathon, and obviously all the majors and all these big races are fantastic, but the crowds, I could do without the crowd. So I don't know. I mean, some bigger ultras, there's crowds too. But I say, going out to Crystal Lake, doing, anything that Henri Mule does out there is fantastic. It's less crowded, and yeah, that's my preference these days. But
The vibe is so different.
yes, the vibe is definitely different. There's a lot of fun opportunities out there, and it doesn't have to be big races, right? And that's it. I think people, again, it's this mindset of I have to get all the medals, I have to run all these big races, I have to do that kind of stuff. And there are local races, there are free races there. Kara does all those park runs and other things. So there is always somewhere to run. And again, you don't have to. Racing is fun, right? I get that. And obviously, as I get older, I'm not winning anything. So maybe that's part of the wisdom is that I'm old, and so I'm like, oh, winning's not everything. But it isn't. Like, coming back to my philosophy of running being more of a mental thing, right? Therapy, that you can find that if that's what you want. And again, why do you run? So for me, that's what I'm searching for, right? But yes, if you are running to win the things, if you're running to do all the majors, if you're running because that's your goals, then they're there, right? But it's wonderful that there are races out there for everyone, right? Different locations, different distances, different mindsets, different things. So that's all wonderful.
I want every official race that I run to be a PR.
Just do it once and then be done.
Every time I run a PR or every time I run a 5K, from now forever, every time I do a 5K, it needs to be a PR because otherwise, why am I doing it?
I want that for you too. However, completely and utterly unrealistic that is. I want that for you too. And to piggyback on what Ryan said, I think if you look at it from the outside, every element of running is completely inclusive. There are races of different price levels, different distances, different areas, different terrains, different to include every person that would like to be there. It's having your own definition of yourself that you can put yourself in that situation though. Back to you're getting older, because every time you say that, I'm like, yeah, I get it. I've got the feeling. When in 2021, that was the one year I did 24 live races, and I know that's a sickness. And I took home a lot of age group awards because I ran races that had like 125 people, 200 people, and there weren't a lot of people in my age group to begin with. Now, does that diminish it? Absolutely not, because you race who shows up. If you're the only one in your age group, that's because you're the only one of your age that got off your ass that day and went and ran. Yep. So you deserve that medal like anybody else does. I happen to not like big races. I've never been a fan of big races. I'm not comfortable in a corral with 3,000 of my closest friends, which is why I'm actually not doing the shuffle again.
That's the reason I've never done it. I just was like, nope, no thanks. I don't like big crowds. So
too many. No, I prefer smaller little races where the race director, the photographer, you may know, it's the race director, the timer, all the same people over and over again, because that's a little family in itself. It's local racing. All right, Ryan, what's your, so we have, okay. All right, Marie, what is your new goal for the half?
It's not a new goal. It is an existing goal that I have not met yet from January and February. So the January F3, I PR'd. I didn't hit my time goal. It was still a PR. My time goal was a 2:15. I think I ended with like a 2:18. And then February, I went into that half knowing that it wasn't going to happen.
Right?
It was
it was a fun run.
Different weather, different elevation. It was a afternoon evening run, and I knew I was drinking the night before and the day of. Couple Swifter friends, we took a whiskey shot right before we went into the corrals, so I knew that wasn't going to be
high performance.
Yes. So I still have a goal of hitting a sub 2:15. For the 8K, maybe we'll see whether this is a good time to try to hit a pace goal. I am hoping to be able to do an 8K at a sub 10-minute pace.
That is absolutely realistic. Considering your half marathon time, that is absolutely realistic. And even with the little finagling you got to do around there, I think that's absolutely realistic. All right, Ryan. So what are your goals?
To be healthy.
Yeah. That's actually one of the best goals of all.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I've had some weird health scares. So that is my main thing. And running really was about being healthy, right? I feel like I kind of started my family later in life, and that was a little bit of the impetus to start running again, right? Once the kids were a little bit older and I could get out, was that I wanted to be around for them, right? And so just for my sake and to build more memories with them, just to get out and run and be healthier. So I don't know, weird, heavy thoughts about, family and that kind of stuff. And again, losing my stepdad and other things. Well, and some other friends the last several years have weighed on me and made me think, a lot about that kind of stuff. And I value my family so much, and I don't want to lose those memories. So just my health in general is probably the biggest thing on my mind. As an actual running goal for Berlin, I don't have one. I want to have fun. I just want to go out there and do it and be a sightseer. But again, the goals really aren't time for me anymore. Like I say, when I was younger, I ran 5Ks in Florida and other things, and I had those accolades, and that's fine. But I think sometimes challenging myself just to run maybe a different distance. I would say I'd love to go back out and maybe do another 50K or more. Again, body willing and able. Those are the things I like to do, and maybe, I don't know, some other work. Maybe not a coach. I don't necessarily see myself in that kind of thing, but I don't know. Maybe helping other things within the Swifters. There's been a lot of asks actually for children's programming with the Swifters or something. So again, and it'd be easier, right? Because Noah wants to run, so it'd be easy to be like, oh, okay, let's go do it. All right, I'll bring some other kids too. Let's go.
Here's why I love that comment. Because you may not be able to do it to the standard or to the extent that you were able to do it before, but it's how can I still use what I know and my background to help others in their journeys. And part of that is literally me sitting on my sofa. I don't do it right now, but what can I do to help others in their journey? And, I get a lot of people who say, exactly, having the conversations, other people who come to me and say, I love that you're talking about this because I feel this way. And I was not able to be as open about it, but now I hear other people talking about it. I always say that I post an episode and I don't care if one person listens. I don't care if 100 people listen. Okay, I care if one person listens because I just want one person who hears something that makes them think of something in their mind. And, I'm not in this for the money. There's no money in this. I'm just in it to help people, share and understand that they're not alone when we're talking about things like what we've talked about. It's perfectly normal.
Yeah. Well, let's just say, right? I mean, people, if you're not talking, right, then you don't know that other people feel the same way you do, or have the same questions, or have. So again, the community aspect of running is wonderful, right? I mean, whether it is in the Swifters specifically, or just the run community at large, or certain race communities, right? That they are very supportive of one another. Like I say, I don't think I've been to a race and seen anybody be mean about something, right? Or like, come on, I mean, jokingly, right? Kind of things like that. But you're rooting for strangers, right? I mean, and again, throughout the pandemic, I don't know how many online friends I've made in the running community. I did a bunch of virtual
relays.
Virtual relays, and then Ragnars. Did some virtual Ragnars and those kind of things. So, and I love those people. I don't know. I mean, I don't know them, right? Honestly, as much as I could if I was there in person, but we've ran together, right? Mm-hmm. And we've supported one another, and that makes all the difference, right? I mean, that is what ties people together, that you're rooting for one another. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, but and the good point there is that, or some of the people I've had on, I've had people on that have done a 2:37 marathon. I've had people on that have done a 6-hour marathon, and the way they express the sense of community is the same. Sometimes you can be intimidated. I know I'm interviewing somebody in the next week and a half to 2 weeks who I never thought I would ask her to be on the show, because in person she intimidates me only because of her ability. She's very nice and I see her a lot, and but I would never have asked her. But I think settling in and talking to more people and understanding we're all in this together. Doesn't matter your ability, doesn't matter your time, lowers that intimidation.
For sure.
All right. I have loved being able to talk to you.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. Like I said, I wasn't exactly sure what to expect, and I know you kind of asked last minute, and then I haven't listened to all of them. I'll be honest, I haven't listened to all the podcasts, but the ones I had, I'm like, okay. So I initially was like, oh, is it gonna be some of that format? I'm like, do I need to bring medals? Do I need to like bring other stories about this and that? So yeah, I thank you for letting us participate and share our stories.
No, I love the honesty with which you both brought, because this wasn't like a all around, happy peppy. We're talking about like serious, legitimate issues that we all deal with, and that there are people in the running community that, how do we help them? Me, you with the air quotes, runner, how do we all help how we view ourselves? And hopefully, I know I take away a little bit from every episode, and there was a lot of times that both of you just kind of were like, I don't know how to answer that. So hopefully I've given you a little food for thought. Mm-hmm. And I very much hope to see you both again in person soon.
Yes,
agreed. Please. Yes, don't be a stranger.
All right,
at the latest the 8K.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. All right. Thank you so much for being here. As always, thank you so much for the listeners for the support of the Flying Pig Project. And as we say, embrace the crazy to unlock a world of possibilities. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
See ya.